Welcome to the Bold Lounge podcast. My name is Lee Burgess, and I will be your host. If you're anything like me, you love hearing inspiring stories of people who have gone on bold journeys and made a positive impact in the world. This podcast is all about those kinds of stories. Every week, we'll hear from someone who has taken a leap or embarked on an extraordinary journey. In addition to hearing their stories, we'll also learn about their bold growth mindset that they use to make things happen. Whether they faced challenges or doubts along the way, they persisted and ultimately achieved their goals. These impactful stories will leave you feeling motivated and inspired to pursue your own bold journey. I believe everyone has a bold story waiting to be freed. Tune in and get ready to be inspired. Welcome to the Bold Lounge. Today I have Ariel Belgrave. She is an award-winning health and fitness expert, a creative wellness consultant, and the founder of Gym Hooky. Love that name. Through her signature approach, the lean methods, she's helped thousands of women around the world adopt simple and sustainable healthy habits for high performance. She's also helped some of the nation's most innovative companies build a culture of wellness in a way that highly engages their audience, fuses in technology, allows for deeper human connection, and is inclusive of authentic cultural experiences. Welcome to the Bold Lounge.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this conversation.
I know we've been talking before, so we're ready to jump into it. So I would love to know your definition of bold, Ariel.
So I would say that this word is one that deeply resonates with the life I have and continue to live. So to me, bold is living, thinking, speaking in ways that is courageous and unapologetic. For me, that can look like being true to who I am, no matter what space I'm in. And that's something that has evolved over time. So giving myself permission to evolve. That looks like unapologetically chasing my passion and the things that bring me joy versus chasing the things that culture tells me I should chase, society, the world tells me I should chase. That is taking leaps and doing it scared, very scared, and just, I'd say just getting up when I fail. I believe that fitness is my jam, so it's only right that I have an analogy that's relative, but I believe that when I fall, I'm building that muscle to be even bolder and more courageous.
Excellent. That is an awesome definition. One of the things that you said is like doing it scared, living, thinking, speaking, and being unapologetically you. And that's not easy.
No.
Simply said, but in the sense of simple does not equal easy for many when it comes to that. So it's a choice too. I think that's really important for folks to understand, and it's intentional.
That's right.
What was the first time, based on your definition, that you remember being bold, or one that stands out for you?
Yeah. So the one I'll share is the one I believe set the foundation for like the rest of my career. So I'm going to take it back to elementary school.
All right, take it back.
Where in elementary school, I'd say I was known for being the girl who loved to play football with the guys during recess in a dress. And I'm teeing this up for being bold because this was me first giving myself permission to be in spaces that it's not that I wasn't allowed, but it wasn't expected.
The convention wasn't there, right?
The convention wasn't there.
Yeah.
Convention wasn't there. So
yeah.
I love sports. And although I was wearing a dress, I'm like, listen, my mom knew. She was like, I'll wear pants underneath that dress because I already know what you're doing, right? So I think even embracing it culturally, because that was something where it was like, okay, no matter what clothes we put her in, she's going to want to play football, and play sports. So for me, I believe that set the foundation for being in spaces where I was the minority in many ways, whether it be my race, whether it be my skill sets, my experience, background, what have you. So it would have to be, that elementary school.
Yeah. So when you played football with the boys or the guys, for you, there was no sense that you shouldn't be doing it, right? There was just like, I would like to do it and I want to have some fun and I'm going to go over here and do it.
Yeah.
So where do you think as adults we lose that?
Ooh.
Because I think, you just, when you're younger, and I think there's just this funky space. I always say it was like late 30s, early 40s for me. I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be all of me all the time, because I won't get promoted, or maybe that group won't like me, or maybe I won't fit in. And I don't know. I did that. Maybe the listeners are just, they've been strong the whole time, but I had this moment and I don't think it was weakness. It was just as of a assimilation in a way.
Yeah.
Like I have to act this way because it's expected. And for me to be successful, in air quotes, everyone, I must do this way. No one wants to hear my thoughts all the time. No one wants to hear about how I encourage people to be bolder, to try something new, or to try something knowing it might fail. Where do you think we lose that childhood spirit of I can do anything I'm meant to do or want to do?
I think, speaking for me personally, I think it's the moment we are of age where there's an even greater influence on what our expectations are, especially when it comes to our careers, even as being women. I'd say for me, even through high school, I feel like I still have that unapologetic edge. The shift for me where I struggled, right? So now I'm speaking about the unapologetic Ari in 2023, but the reality is I lost a sense of that when I went to college. And when you go to college, you're introduced to a whole nother world where people can project their expectations on you. I know for me was also a time where I gave myself permission to even think through what it is I wanted to do in my career as a college student, what have you. But I do think outside influences can be the biggest distractors to that, like, unapologetic joy that we have as kids. And for many, it could be sooner, right? You have family expectations, cultural expectations. I think now, today, it's even a lot more different when you have access to social media. And there's so much that we're being told on how we should be, how we should live our lives. And now it's a whole nother ball game, I think, for the generations coming up.
Yeah, it is definitely a whole nother ball game. I'm glad it wasn't around when I was young.
Oh my God, girl. Same here.
I don't think I would have made it. I just wouldn't. As an adult, some days I don't think I'm going to make it. So, yeah. So definitely, it is something that comes into that. The kind of amplifies the outside expectations or comparison trap that can happen.
That's right.
Definitely something to think about as we, think about healthy habits and intention and really the connectedness that we have, not only as women, but also just as human beings wanting to do good and to, be good in the world. So making sure we're aware of those things as we kind of get older. Hold on to that as long as you can. And if you've lost it, you can get it back.
You can get it back.
Yeah. So after college, kind of where did you go? So obviously you're a founder of Gym Hooky, and tell us a little bit about what Gym Hooky is in your answer so we can understand what it is. But how did you get from college to Gym Hooky? What happened in between there?
A great question, because there's a lot that happened.
Fill us in on that timeline.
Yeah. So one of the things I mentioned, I kind of prefaced was saying that going to college was where I'd say the floodgates were opened on what was possible beyond what I thought could be possible when it comes to success and passion, what have you. So I came into college with the intention of being a doctor. I want to be a doctor where I grew up. And in my culture, success is doctor, lawyer, engineer. Anything else? What is that? What is success? So for me, I came into college, pre-med biology. And what college did for me was gave me access to explore, just the ability to explore other realms. So I actually ended up switching to psychology, still remained pre-med. But by the time I was ready to graduate, I'm like, I don't want to go to medical school. And what I was doing in tandem was actually exploring the business side of things. I was interning at a accounting firm, a tax accounting firm, and I really, really love that world. So fast forward, where I started right out of college was actually in investment banking, and was not a realm. I think I mentioned I teed up playing football and being in these spaces that I wasn't designed to say the least. But me being a psychology major and entering spaces like investment banking, where I never had the Big Four internships or any of that attached to my name. I worked for a small accounting firm, and that was where I knew that I can do anything. It brought me so much joy to be in those spaces and just be able to thrive. Fast forward, part of being in these spaces was what created, I'd say, a pain to a purpose with Gym Hooky. So I went from being an athlete. I was actually a rugby player in college.
Nice.
Listen, tough girl.
I see the football in elementary to rugby in college. Okay, all right.
It's all connecting. But when I did take that to go all in, and I'd say the real world, I struggled to take the best care of myself, right? Going from an athlete to not having the structure, the accountability, something to look forward to being and performing your best. I wasn't showing up and I wasn't working out. I wasn't eating healthy. And I started to lose myself. And this is where I had to have my come to Jesus moment where it's like, okay, you have a gym membership, you're not using it. You're working 80+ hour weeks. You still have to take the best care of yourself. Because I was moving up the ladder very fast. And I wasn't really given the tools to deal with the burnout. It was just tools on how you move up the ladder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know the map of how to get there in the sense of professionally, like what are the steps, but I don't remember anyone ever talking to me about make sure you do this, make sure this is happening, because this is the other side of you. Your personal well-being is important just as much as your professional track.
That's right. That's right. And I worked in a male-dominated environment, a white male-dominated environment.
Yeah.
So no one's talking about those things. And for me, I felt that was like keeping up with the Joneses, right?
Yeah.
Like especially being on the younger side, young Black woman, it's like, okay, I have to build a lot of rapport and trust and like bring my A game at all times. So Gym Hooky ended up starting. I started actually doing home workouts because I had a gym membership, never used it. So hopefully Gym Hooky sounds like what it is, which is this notion of skipping the gym, but more of a positive movement of how you can take the best care of yourself outside of the gym. So that's inclusive of everything, even beyond working out, from your mindset to the food you're eating, to the boundaries you're setting, what have you. And I realized I worked with a lot of women, well, not a lot of women, but the women that when we did come together, like, oh my gosh, you look great. I'm seeing a change. I would love to go to the gym with you. And I'm like, actually, I work out at home. And I actually started sharing my workouts on Tumblr.
Okay.
Throwback, right?
Take us back to Tumblr.
So I started sharing on Tumblr. And then that's when I realized that the need to create this community, the need to share education on what wellness can look like in a simple way was absolutely necessary for women like me who were career-oriented, very ambitious. So fast forward to January 2015, I officially created an Instagram, called it Gym Hooky. And literally that's where it all started, with creating community and just a lot of education around well-being. And while working in banking, I also progressed in my career, ended up working for a nonprofit, moving to the Bay Area, then ended up at Meta working in tech. And at this point, I had already transitioned to the HR space, focused on employee engagement. And in 2020 was when I took the full leap. The timing was pretty wild because I gave actually notice a month before the pandemic. Pandemic was international.
Yeah.
My very last day at Meta was the very first day of shelter in place in California.
Okay.
And it's crazy how the timing worked because I built a brand around home workouts. So it actually worked in my favor to be able to be a source and a voice for what it looked like to take the best care of yourself at home.
Yeah, it was meant to be. I mean, it's just like, it's amazing when your path that you've been on and the path you're meant to be on, like, merge. And you're just like, whoa, did that just happen? I don't know. Did you have that moment of like, did that just happen?
Yes. And it's crazy because when I think back, and I'm like, man, if there was just a 1 week difference, I would have been. So I'd say I'm a risk taker, but I'm a calculated risk taker.
Yeah. That's what being bold is. It's thoughtful. It's pragmatic. I mean, there's a myth that you just leap without looking, but it's not that. You're very thoughtful.
It's attention for me. And while I'll be the first to say it was not in my cards to ever want to be an entrepreneur when I grew up. For me, what was a side hustle made me feel like it would take me to that next level of chasing impact and chasing the things that really light me up. And that was in alignment with that. So timing wise, it was actually pretty wild. But I think if it was like a 2 week difference, I'd probably been like, probably should take several seats and stay in corporate with all this craziness happening.
Yeah, plan B. Yeah, no, it definitely comes into play.
Yeah.
So what have you learned about yourself in 3 years since founding your company? You're almost to 4 years, honestly. So I started in September of 20. It sounds like you started in February, March of 20. So like, as you've built the company, what have you learned about yourself? And then how has Gym Hooky changed or evolved since then? Because it has.
Ooh, this is a great question. So I needed to make a lot of mindset shifts going from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur. I realized that I was tying a lot of my worth. When in the corporate world, you have like performance management and there's these metrics that allow you to progress based on how you perform and how much money you make and what have you. And I had to treat that very differently. I had to separate the two. And you spoke about this briefly earlier, was when I started, I didn't want to have to keep thinking about money. It was making an impact. And the moment that I shifted my mindset on wanting to make an impact and knowing and actually truly believing, like having the abundant mindset that is there and I'm deserving of that, that's where it was that shift. I found myself always comparing everything to the corporate world, which I'd say in the first year was holding me back a little bit, where it was like my goals were a bit minute. I'd say where it's like, oh, well, I'm just, when I compare it to the 10 plus years that I was in corporate, it took me quite a bit of time to get to this salary and to make these achievements and this impact. So probably I should give myself 10 years to do that, when in reality, what I accomplished within the first years far surpassed how quickly I moved in corporate. So that was one. The other is my natural love for learning. I am someone who I'm very curious. And wherever I can, I love to be in spaces with people smarter than me. And that's something that I've prioritized in my business and even in my career. It's like an extension of mentorship and what that can look like. Now in the entrepreneurship world, it's like masterminds and accelerators and different things. And I realized for me, having that sense of accountability allows me to execute even faster because I'm a doer, but also having sound advice on this entrepreneurship journey has been really great. And then asking for help. I'm someone who can want to do it all. And in the roles that I was in corporate, I had a lot on my shoulders. I absolutely dealt with burnout and navigated that quite a few times. And as an entrepreneur, it's like, girl, time to start getting a team. It's time to start asking for help. It's time to get sound advice from mentors. And that has allowed me to just bring my business to new heights.
Yeah. So as we evolve businesses, or people evolve kind of where they are in their own career, I think there is just a sense of also reinvention. Like, okay, it worked here, but it's not working here. What I did in 22 isn't the same as 23. And, it's not going to be what we do in 24. How did you embrace reinvention through those times? And is it an integral part of someone when they're thinking about their health as well?
Yeah, I'd say a big part for me was knowing that I can slow down in order to speed up. Mm-hmm. So being really thoughtful about what I'm building and also how I'm building my own habits that are in alignment with the life I'm trying to build. So I'm definitely a forward thinker. I'm always thinking about what it is that what does success look like for me? And that has even evolved. Before it was like, oh, I want to have a house or I want to have all the money in the bank. And today it's like, I'm working for freedom. And freedom I'd imagine my definition for freedom today can look different 5 years from now. I don't have kids yet, but I imagine priorities can shift once that happens. But for right now, it is defining what freedom looks like for me. And that is like certain parts of work being a choice, being able to do the things I am passionate about. I like to say I chase peace. So in all that I do in that evolution, I realized technically I have been chasing peace since college, but knowing that how I'm choosing to interact with people, the people I surround myself with, the decisions that I make, what I choose to offer for services, even within my business, is all getting me steps closer to that sense of freedom and peace. And one thing I do like to say is my corporate skills are paying the bills. Mm-hmm. So it is also knowing that the experiences that I brought from that decade of being in the corporate world is more than valuable in my world as an entrepreneur. I initially was like, oh, okay, HR, fitness, time to scrap it, when I actually feel like it allowed me to navigate the world during the pandemic, especially in the fitness space, very different mm-hmm. than the average wellness professional, which allowed me to take things to more heights. So it's literally taking all my experiences in one and changing my mindset to get to a place of what I would deem as freedom.
Yeah. So really powering your future with your experiences from the past, right? And really, I think that's what it's all about. You learn from it, you grow from it, you learn what to do, not to do. I think one of the interesting pieces just about your journey to now is you have like the insider scoop of like what that world is like, which is unhealthy.
That's right.
Yeah. So without that, and you experience it yourself of like you weren't doing the workouts, you weren't going to the gym. And I don't know that I'm sure you know the exact specifics about how much people spend on gym memberships and then don't go. The psychology around it. And we were talking before we started taping about just wanting to have folks who are interacting, now with the collective and with the things that you're doing, but for people to think about their health now, not waiting until December 31st when we hit the New Year's resolutions and all that stuff. What do you think we don't get right when it comes to thinking about our health as something we can improve today? It doesn't have to wait until we're done traveling or till we're done with that particular project or, once this happens in my life. Like I always feel like, at least for me, like I have an excuse and I'm really getting tired. I told my team, like I'm over myself and my excuses lately. So I just want to get at it and like, I have to do it and I'm doing it. But I think sometimes we just like put our health off or we back burner it. Why does that happen with all your experience that you've had?
Yeah. So I'd say two things. A lot of us tend to, when it comes to like our career and building, whether it be our businesses or being in corporate, and then versus our health, we see them as mutually exclusive versus what it can look like in tandem. Mm-hmm. Because I think oftentimes we have had experiences where we feel like our back is against the wall and we have to choose one or the other. Like I don't have time to work out because I have a lot of meetings. I am working really late. It's about making it a priority though. And I like to say that we can tell a lot about a person by what they choose to put on what's on their calendar. So making sure that you are on your calendar, if there are workouts you need to do, if there is, wellness can span beyond workouts, obviously, but adding yourself as a priority rather than making it mutually exclusive. The other is that we wait until our gas tank is on E before we fill it up. And we think that, okay, well, I'm just going to work really hard. I'm going to go hard, and then I'll be able to go on PTO in a month or in December to start the year strong. Mm-hmm. And the reality is it takes more than a week to recover, especially if you're in burnout. Some people are burning out for like a solid year and don't even realize it because our body has been in this fight or flight response for a very long time, that it's natural to feel this amount of stress until we have this break-in point.
Why do we do that? I guess it's interesting. So I had a group that went to one of our retreats and they all had goals, one in personal, professional, and wellness. And they like rocked their personal, professional goal. And then I would say 80% of them backburnered their health goal. Mm. And it comes back to prioritization. Including myself, and it comes back to making the time for it, knowing you have to do it, but you're not doing it. I've heard that a bunch of times. I know what I need to do, but I'm just not doing it. And that's habit, right? That's habit formation and it's choice. I always say, well, that's a choice, right? So when it comes to kind of how or what should someone do if they're trying to front burner their health, like what are the steps that someone can take that they may just be a small step forward, but it is a step towards a healthier you, which is so important. And I know everyone listening wants to be healthier in some form or fashion, whether it's emotionally, physically, mentally. Like we all have stuff that we want to feel better about in those areas.
Yes, great question. And you said a word that sticks out and what my response will be. And you mentioned small steps. Mm-hmm. Number one, I'd say of the clients that I've had, the number one barrier that I've helped them get through is the all or nothing mindset. Mm. A lot of people they'll start this journey and they will go from 0 to 100. And the moment they can't hit that 100, then it is like, well, I missed that workout, so I'm not continuing, or they feel like they've entirely fell off. So what I always say is give yourself permission. Anyone, even if I went off track and needed to get back on as a fitness professional, I even start smaller and thinking about the small things that you can do, and don't force yourself to make every change at once, right? I think in an ideal world, we'd love to work out as often as possible, eat all the healthiest meals, drink all the water, set all the boundaries. But how are you going to do that one step at a time so it's not overwhelming to the point where the moment you fall off, it's a lost cause. So what I usually challenge folks to do is think of one thing they can do very well and do it consistently. Perfection is not going to get you where you want to be. It is consistent. So my rule of thumb is to not miss whatever it is you committed to 2 days in a row, right? So if you committed to working out and you're like, okay, I'm going to work out 4 days this week. and you miss a day. Okay, I am not going to miss. I'm going to just pick up right where I left off versus beating myself up and just give myself more grace.
Mm-hmm.
That's one, starting small. The other is understanding that in order to say yes to yourself, you're going to have to say no to other things, right? It is absolutely impossible. If right now, if you are living a life where you can't even think about 30 minutes that you can fit in to go for a walk or to make sure you're hydrated, that means something has got to give. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you were to write down every single thing on your plate, there may be an opportunity for you. It may not be as important as you're making it seem, or it's not a priority right now. So thinking about what are those things that you may need to say no to, and in those things, is there anyone that you can get help from, delegate? Because I have a lot of high-strung clients who are just like, yeah, but it's mine, it's like, but other people can do it.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be yours.
It doesn't. And this is where it becomes a you problem, right? So it's like perfectionism is something that is causing you to burn out because you are not giving other people the chance to help you. You're not communicating that you need help. Even as I have a lot of clients who are mothers, where it's like, well, I have all these responsibilities of mothers. Like, okay, well, have you asked your spouse? Because I actually have a lot of guy friends too, where it's like, oh, how do I get my wife to like actually ask for help? She wants to do it all. And I know she's struggling, right? So it's both ways. While I want to hold it down for my ladies, I'm like, listen, sometimes we be the problem, and asking for help.
Sometimes someone just has to say, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do every piece or part of that. Some of the questions my team will ask me was like, well, why are you doing that? Can we do that? Right. Can someone else help with that? I'm like, oh, yeah. Great question. Yeah. So it's helpful to also like have other people call you on it and help you be accountable to yourself, which for me, I'll just tell you, is sometimes really, really hard. If I'm just working out for me, like, okay, I could skip it. I might not make it. I, might miss 2 days. But if I'm showing up for you, I'm there. Like, I'm not missing. I'm not letting her down. I'm going to be there. What is it about that happens when we're doing something with regard to kind of our health or workouts or those types of things?
And making other people a priority over ourselves?
Yeah, like I'm accountable to you more than I'm accountable to me.
That can be deeper. And when I say deeper, there's healing there, because what I also know as someone who's a recovering people pleaser, that's something that I've had to work through as well, where I am at one point was willing to do for others to have a feeling where I felt needed, or I didn't want to make it seem like I wasn't there for people.
You don't want to let anybody down. So I think there might be other listeners that can relate to just not wanting to let anyone else down, always wanting to be there, be supportive. But sometimes the one that we need to not let down is ourselves. We need to be there for ourselves. And so I just think, and I'm saying that out loud, I'm hearing it myself, I think it's something that you just need to remember, because we put a lot of energy into others, but how much energy are you putting into yourself?
That's right. And one thing I will always say is that when you take the best care of yourself, everyone around you wins. Your kids, your spouse, your colleagues. Why? Because you're able to bring and be your best, right? When you are super burnt out, you're giving half of yourself, which may not be as valuable. And one thing I would challenge listeners to think about, when we live in this world of a lot of calendars, right? A lot of things put on our calendars, and you'll hear the word time management thrown around a whole lot, right? Because we live by our calendars. But one thing that I would challenge you to think, if you feel like you look at your calendar and there's so many things there's so many obligations that you have before work, during work, after work, is to measure your energy versus time, right? Time, I'd say, is nearly infinite. You'll look at your calendar, and if someone was to say, hey, Lee, like, I have a question. Do you have 30 minutes today? You may look at your calendar and be like, well, actually, I do have 30 minutes during the workday. But the question you should be asking yourself is, do I have the energy? Especially if it's a case, if it's back to back to back. I challenge you to think of energy as currency. You are earning it, and that way you earn it is how you're filling up your battery. You are spending it. That's how you're expending it to other people, and then you're saving it. You don't want to get your your currency or your piggy bank to zero. You always have to think about how you are. I don't want to use this word because I don't want that to be the word, but like a little bit selfish with your energy. You don't have to give it to everyone. So I challenge folks to think about that. If you feel like time tends to slip away. Be honest with yourself, and you owe it to yourself to just measure against what energy you have, because you could always have 30 minutes on your calendar and have that time, but do you have the energy for that conversation?
Yeah, it's like we've definitely heard of the energy audits. I actually look at my calendar some days. I'm going, how much energy will that meeting take versus that meeting? Can I really have a back to back of those two? Just in the sense of how much am I giving in that? Am I just a participant versus leading, which is another use of energy? And if I think back about my corporate schedule, I easily had 12 hours meetings a day on average, no less than 10 on average.
And you probably didn't, I was going to say, you probably didn't start the work day because you're in meetings all day, and then you have takeaways from those meetings.
Yeah.
You're working later at night to actually
I got to a point where I was doing 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And then the pandemic just kind of pushed it for me. In that sense, it was like, it's just too much. It was ridiculous. And part of it, I did it to myself, right? Of just being responsible, wanting to be responsive and not letting anybody down and all that. But yeah, so it got to a point where it just wasn't, I had no energy left, and no wonder why, So I think it is important for people to actually look at their calendar and then actually do something about it. I think that's the second step that kind of gets missed. They look at it, they go, oh, I just don't know what to do. And again, it's the small steps. Maybe you can't clear a Friday or clear a Monday, and that's hard to do. Take it a step by step. Start blocking an hour, start blocking 30 minutes, start blocking your mornings to not start. Doesn't mean you don't start working till 10, but maybe you just want 8 to 10 to be like, I just want to get in my space, get organized, whatever it may be, or focus on certain things. I think people have better focus times too, whether it might be in the morning or the afternoon, and thinking about when the best of you is, and then match that with the things that are the most important in your schedule.
Yes, I love that. And one thing I want to mention, I feel like when you see articles online, you'll see a lot of like, oh, this is what this famous person does, or to be successful in the morning. What's their morning routine? And that's another thing that could be overwhelming, is just the things we read online. You see people who like wake up at 4 a.m. and they have the most productive day by 9 a.m.
Meditate, cold plunge.
Yeah, all the things. And I'm like, listen, if there's anything that you listening takes away from this, is that you need to create a routine that is in alignment for your life and the season that you're in. Okay. So if January 2024 comes in, I know right now the group is planning, and you set a routine, that may not be the same routine in March 2024. It is giving yourself permission to meet you where you're at. So if your morning routine is mainly like, okay, I'm going to wake up, not pick up my phone for the first 30 minutes and focus and maybe journal, or I want to go for a walk, or maybe do my workout, and choose 1 to 2 things that you could be consistent with, versus a morning routine that stresses you out just by the thought of it. That can be very meaningful for wherever you are in your wellness journey, because those actions are a sure sign of your commitment to yourself, which is not just now. It's the long game, and the choices you make now are going to impact what your life is like when you are 70, when you are 80. So it's never too early to make sure you're making yourself a priority.
Yeah. And it's never too late to start. Going back to what you said earlier, like people think it's all or nothing. Oh, I can't reduce my sugar. I love sugar. That's me. But I mean, but it's like, yes, you can. You could just start making better choices, right? You could choose how much that one's worth to you versus all of them all the time, So like choose it wisely. Oh, I can't drink 8 glasses of water today. Well, how about starting with 3? Again, it's just this, to begin. You got to start. And you have to make that choice for you and saying, I'm not going to be unhealthy any longer. And I think sometimes it's that first step that's the very, very hardest. I love what you said about kind of the being what season you're in, but also just even thinking about what you said, even the seasons of how you work out. Like as it gets into winter versus spring versus summer versus fall, like you're going to be doing different things. I personally like to switch it up anyway, or I get bored. There's certain things I could keep maybe as a base, but then I got to do some different things around it so that I keep interest as well. Do you see that with your clients as well, or is it kind of a mix?
It's a mix. There are some folks who are like gung ho, this is what I like. I like to do it, but I actually encourage variety. As someone who's a wellness professional and most people see me doing strength training, I also love to dance. I love to try new things. And that is the only way. You don't want your body to get so used to one thing, because then that's when you plateau. You may not feel the same effects.
Yeah.
So give your body, surprise your body every now and then, right? And I think it's very healthy, especially if you have a level of self-awareness where you're like, I get bored. And what happens when you get bored, you're not as motivated or even committed to making it happen because you're bored. So that's how you go for it. Switch it up.
You can also do a hybrid of in-person and virtual too. I like to be in groups exercising. If I run or something like that, I want to be with other people, or I want to be competing with other people in a way. Yes. I think it's a combination. Thinking of the psychology, you're a psychology major. That was your base of like the psychology of sport is quite fascinating as well, right? In the sense of how we even think about why we're doing what we're doing. So what are some psychology nuggets or something that connects us to a healthier us? Like, what do we need to realize might be happening?
Ooh, so there's a word that I want to tie to what you've been explaining in doing things that you enjoy when it comes to movement, or at least switching things up, and that is joyful movement.
Okay.
So that is that notion that you are going to do when it comes to movement. And I say movement, right? It doesn't have to be you having a gym membership. It's anything where movement is happening, but make it joyous, only because when you are doing what you enjoy, you are more likely to be consistent with it. You don't want your wellness to appear to be a chore. You don't want it to, it is a privilege, right? But you don't want it to be one where you're like, oh, okay, I have to go work. I was like, no, I actually want to look forward to this. And it's beyond how it makes you look. Maybe you going on a run or doing those classes in-person group sessions brings you great energy. It makes you feel more energized, especially if you're coming off of a stressful day. So it's thinking about definitely joyful movement. And then B, I got to bring in bold, right? It is giving yourself, it is being unapologetic and how you show up for yourself, as long as you're showing up for yourself. I know that there are so many things that you can read online on how you should be doing it. And yes, there are some things you should be doing if you want to accomplish certain goals. But when you're thinking about the long game, it is thinking everything holistically, down to even pausing if you need to and doing meditation, right? There are some days where you're probably like, I don't have it in me to do a full out workout. Okay, go for a walk, listen to a podcast, move your body in that way. And you mentioned the psychology. Oftentimes we wait for motivation, right? So we believe that when we're motivated is when we can start. But in reality, it starts with action. It's action that motivates us, because, ready for this? Let's use, Lee, let's use you for example. You mentioned running. So if you were in a place where you're like, oh, okay, I'm off track. I'm just waiting for that moment to go for a run. What I would suggest for you is to just go for a run, even if it's 5 minutes. Lee, I want you to go for a 5-minute run. Why? Because you're going to go on that run and you're going to feel the effects of that run. You're going to feel good from that run. You're going to remember the why related to that run. And then that's going to motivate you to do it the next day. Oftentimes we wait around for motivation, and it's not motivation. It's more of a discipline, or just from the get-go, just starting, period. And that can build your excitement up to do it again and again and again and again. Yeah.
And you might also realize how far you are away from your goal. Like, I just think about going for a run right now. I know I couldn't go as far.
Oh, but you're comparing it to a time that you used to have.
Yeah.
So that will be the other thing I would say, is be careful on comparing ourselves. Comparison is a thief of joy. And oftentimes we hear that in the context of other people, but also comparing ourselves to versions of ourselves 5 years ago, 10 years ago can also be unfair. So it is literally thinking about where you are now and what does version 2.0 of Lee look like? What does version 2.0 of anyone listening here look like for how it is you want to feel, how you want to look? Not to say you can't achieve those things that time that you did 5 years ago, but even with you saying it's like, oh, it's terrible, my time was X. And it's like, listen, you may need to have a new goal because you're in a different place. You're older, life is different. There's different responsibilities that you have. Our body as women just changes in ways that are out of our control, So making sure that that's a priority in general.
Yeah. That's probably a reasonable thing that a lot of people do. So like, I'm about to turn, it'll be 52. I was comparing myself to the 42 Lee.
Okay.
but I also never want to feel like I'm settling. And I think that's in a little bit of a way, like I just want to keep pushing myself to be the best me at 52, not trying to be 42 Lee, because I don't know, there's lots of 42 Lee I don't have anymore. Like mentally, some of the things I'm more confident about, but definitely I think that's a good thing to point out for folks to remember. Don't compare yourself to others, but also don't compare yourself to yourself as well. Maybe it was a couple years ago, maybe things have changed. It doesn't mean you can't get back on track, like you said, or get to where you want to be, but don't like compare it. Just be happy you're taking the run. You took a run today.
Right.
Check. Like, let's celebrate that. Like something you hadn't done in a long time. So I love that mindset flip there as well. I'm going to end with habits, because I think that's one of the things really, really important for people to understand, that their habits are part of their mindset, are part of the things that they're doing. So we're talking right now around the cue, the routine, and the reward around someone's habit. So like, what's the cue? Like if you get upset, or what's the cue if you eat chocolate in the afternoon, or what's the cue if you skip your workout? Like, oh, was it a long day? So in all of the work you've done with the thousands of people you've worked with, what are some of the things around the cue, the routine, and the reward for establishing a good habit that, from a tip perspective, we can use?
So when I think of being on your wellness journey, I always want you to think of it as, rather than taking things away, it is what you can add. Mm-hmm. So we can use water, for example. I love that you mentioned the cue, routine, reward. Mm-hmm. So using water, for example, we know we got to drink more water. So when I say I want you to think of what you're adding, is how can you add it to your existing routine versus thinking about all the things you got to take away. Because as humans, it's just harder. We have a sense of rebellion naturally, whether we want to admit it or not, when we're told we can't have something. So when we think about adding water, for example, you should absolutely have water first thing in the morning. Okay. Like our body, when you're sleeping 7-8 hours, it is dehydrated. So having a sip of water. How would I have you build your routine? Is you can consider what that routine looks like for you. I know for me personally, I'm like, okay, I'm going to fill up my water the night before and put it on my nightstand, because I know a habit that I have is hitting my alarm clock. I wake up, I sit up on my bed, right? I might have my moment of my wusa meditation, water's right there. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be adding it to an existing routine so it doesn't seem like it's way off. So that's the key. You want to add a healthy habit to something that you're already doing regularly that you don't even need to think about doing. And how you make that a routine is finding ways to naturally include it. And the reward is, in this case, is like being hydrated, feeling good, not feeling parched, and being able to go about your day and maybe have that coffee next or do your workout. But that was an example.
Yeah. So I think it's important for people to realize too, like it doesn't mean stopping something. It just may be replacing a habit. So when people say, I need to stop doing that or stop doing this, your brain's going to look for something. So if it's looking for sugar in the afternoon, or if it's, you're drinking coffee in the morning as your first thing, or a soda versus actual water, your body's going to still want to be hydrated. You'll want to keep drinking something. And why not replace your second coffee with the water? And you can have a second coffee after that if you want, but just thinking about how to replace it. So I think that's important fact that you just kind of talk through. It's not always ending something, and it's adding it to what you already do. So it doesn't feel like this huge step to make it happen.
That's right. And then the other thing I want to mention is, I know we brought up kind of emotional eating is the thing, right? We have our moments where we're stressed. We're going to go. Some of us may go for the sweet. Some of us may go for the salty, mm-hmm. or ... whatever in between.
Or both.
Or both, right? Or both. But in this case, it's really important. This is where a level of self-awareness is really important, right? So it's thinking about what feelings are surrounding that. I know for me, when I'm definitely an emotional eater, I'll go for the gummies. And there are things I've had to put in place to, you said it best, replace it. But the only way that I can replace it is being aware of the feelings that surround it, where I'm like, oh man, when I'm like stressed, I choose to do this. Or if I'm anxious, I may do this. And first identifying what those emotions are is going to be the first step to figuring out what you can possibly replace it with. And that replacement will look like, okay, well, what can fill that gap for stress? Do I need to go for like a 5-minute walk? And so I'm not distracted and just going to the cabinet. If I'm feeling anxious, do I need to maybe put on music that can be calming for me versus going to the cabinet? So thinking about what those things could be for replacement, that can just help you just build healthier habits overall.
Yeah. One of the key things is, for me, it's so simple one, is don't buy it.
Don't buy.
Like,
Yes.
don't buy those Skittles, don't buy those Swedish fish, just don't buy the things that, for me, like a vice is Coca-Cola. Like I have drank a Coke in the morning since I was in high school. And so not a great habit. And I guess it was my coffee in high school. And then it just kind of, just became something. And obviously it's not good for you for many, many reasons, but it became a really bad habit. But if I don't buy it, I can't drink it. So that's just something as simple as out there. And then it isn't in the cabinet. And like doing a purge of your cabinet is probably a really good thing to think about too, as we kind of get into the latter part of this year and we're kicking off all these things that we want to do or want to achieve. You don't have to wait till the end of the year to do these things, but kind of doing a purge of your cabinet is like, why is that in there? Because it's not going to support my goals of what I want to do when it comes to my health and wellness.
I totally agree. And this is where envisioning what you'll always hear me say, and I refer to it, the 2.0 version. Mm-hmm. So even when folks are thinking about the life they want to have in 2024, I'm big on the visual reminder of what that can look like, right? Or even just thinking of what your life will be. So when you open those cabinets, is what in your cabinet a reflection of how you want to feel, how you want to look in 2024? And always think of it that way, because right now, it may very well not be. But if you know that you want to feel energized, if you want to reduce the brain fog that you may be feeling, if you want to be more confident inside and outside your body, those things may not be a reflection of it. And the reality is it probably has got to go.
Yeah. It's got to go. All right. I love ending on that. Such a fun conversation. All the information about Ariel and her work and Gym Hooky, please check it out in the episode notes and follow her and learn more about her journey as well as how she can help yours. Thank you for being on the Bold Lounge.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Bold Lounge podcast. Through the continuum of bold stories, vulnerability to taking a leap, you will meet more extraordinary people making a positive impact for others through their unique and important story. By highlighting these stories, we hope to inspire others and share the journey of those with a bold mindset. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and look forward to sharing the next bold journey with you.